Black women over 40, one of these mistakes is stealing your retirement timeline. Let's talk about it. Ladies, we have covered in the last two videos, we talked about finances, we talked about living arrangements, expenses, and we hit on healthcare, and we just hit on what we need to do to step up and speed up this retirement for us women, right? So today we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes that's holding us back, okay? And I'm here in the situation too, so I'm learning as I'm going, and we're just going to keep teaching each other, and we're going to keep going with this because I want everybody to live their best life. I know I do. And I feel like we don't have to wait until we are in our older age to enjoy our life. We want to enjoy our lives while bones and everything is still moving, good mind, and all the things. And have a good time, enjoy your life. And don't be caught up in these golden handcuffs. And always know there is no shame here. What we're doing is strategy. We're not shaming anybody for where they are, where they're not, and things like that. And that's including myself. We're not shaming. We're here to help each other, okay? So in saying all of that, today we are covering 5 mistakes and what we need to do instead. The first mistake, not knowing your number. You're like, Kelly, what do you mean your number? Your number. Your number is what do you need to actually retire? Like, we know we live the way we live, right? And we get our paycheck. So you know your number. You know what you need to live on today's expenses. If you retire, things are going to be different. Things are going to downsize or so forth. And if you want to even stay the way you are living, just know your number. So you need to know what you need to have to maintain your life, or if you downsize. What we're not going to do is, we'll figure that out later. That's the biggest mistake. We're not going to figure that out later. We're going to figure that out now. We're going to figure out what we need to retire or what that look like. And if you sit and you say, well, maybe I don't have to live like this. I know for me, I don't. Kelly does not need to live like this in retirement. No. So I know my number. My number is not my number that I have here. My number is way significantly lower because I've come to realize that money can bring happiness depending on how it's being used. But money is not happiness. Does that make any sense? Money can bring happiness, but money isn't happiness. So you have to figure out how you can make your own happiness. Talk about that later. Why not knowing your number delays your retirement? It's because you're just living in the moment. And you're like, we'll think about that later, when I get to that point. And then when you get 59 and a half or 55, you're like, oh, damn, I should have been putting a little bit extra here, putting a little bit extra there. Again, no shame. We're just figuring out strategy. Because I do know that sometimes you may need your whole paycheck and you can't put nothing to the side. You have to have your whole paycheck. And sometimes putting to the side will take away from, paying that light bill, paying for these school stuff. Because at the end of the day, sometimes we may not have younger children, but we may have grandkids. We may be taking care of somebody. And sometimes life can throw you the only curveball and you have to adjust. So grace is here, but we're just figuring out strategy. Okay? So what we're going to do to figure out this number, we're going to figure out monthly expenses. Literally sit down. Like, we know what we have to pay. Sometimes things are on auto pay and we moving on auto pay. But no, actually get a pen, paper, sit down, write things out. See what best works for you, what your expenses are, what your number is now, what you thinking it might be later. Yes, we have to also think about inflation. So we do things like that to make sure that we have enough funds to take care of ourselves in retirement. Your number doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be clear. Mistake number 2, lifestyle creeps after you start making more money. I'm guilty. I am guilty. This is probably the number one killer of making sure you are good in, at retirement and, holding us back. You making more money. You could do a little bit more. You sitting back and think about things that you might want to get, what you might want to have. Like, oh, when I make this money, I'm going to do this for myself. Yes. Pour into yourself. I'm an advocate for that. However, I feel like when you get to a certain point in life, and yes, it might be a catch-22 and you might feel like you burn at both ends of the candle, you have to sit back and say, you know what, I got to do some financial planning and making sure that I have things set up. If I'm going to make a little bit more money, I'm going to live off of what I've already been living off of. And I'm going to take this extra funds and I'm going to put this aside so I can prepare for retirement. And this is a good one here. Your timeline is based upon your expenses. If you have a ton of expenses, you can't retire because you have so many expenses, and you can't sit and say, oh, I'll pay it off later. You have to pay things off so you can have that extra money so you can do what you need to do so you can actually sit back and retire. I feel like these type of conversations are not had enough, because if they were had often, we would do better. You know what I mean? We would really, really do better. And I feel like I'm always going to raise my hand on this one. I feel like I could have been along further as well. There's things that stuck me back as well. Again, shopping, credit card debt. And we're going to get into that too. So what is a fix for this? For me, what I do, again, this is just a suggestion. I automate my investments and my retirement before I even see my paycheck. So I know everybody can't do that. Again, it took me a while to get to that point. Automate it. If you can, if you have a retirement fund, if you have some type of 401k or some type of separate IRA, Roth IRA, or some type of brokerage account, some type of high yield savings, take that money and go ahead and just push it out. As soon as your paycheck hit, have it push out, and it goes over there. Now it's compounding, doing what it's supposed to do. We like things like that. So when it's time for us to retire, and we can have multiple streams of income. You might have your 401, you have your savings, and then you'll have, if you have a pension. If not, you have all the different things that you need to sustain you until things like Social Security kicks in, because Social Security doesn't kick in till, I think, 62, 65. I was a little bit unsure about that, and I was getting them confused with the pension. So there's so much to this, but we're going to learn this together. One thing here, I'm going to hold your hand and you are going to hold mine, because we're trying to get this together. My background is in finance, and one thing I can do well is I know how to push a penny back. I don't have to spend a lot of money, and I love to see things grow. So when it comes to budgeting, I'm your girl for that. So we're gonna talk more about budgeting. We're gonna talk more about that later on, but I just want you to know these mistakes so we can definitely get them in order. Mistake number 3, and this is probably the ultimate killer, because I feel like we all use credit cards wrong. And I used to use this too, carrying over high interest credit cards while trying to build wealth. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't have a ton of credit cards and then you're trying to build. You have to get those down. You have to get those down. And I know some people may say, oh, I don't have to pay them. I let them go. They fall off my credit 7 years, blah, 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 all the things. Let me tell you something. Our credit follows us. Yes, it may fall off, but our credit follows us. And we don't want other creditors to look at us and be like, oh, we don't want to give them nothing, because we all need a card here and there for a rainy day. Okay? So we know what that looks like. Having credit cards, buy now, pay later. That is a straight no-no. And personal loans. And I've taken out personal loans for things I need to take care of. Sometimes you just don't want to disrupt other things in your financial ecosystem. So you go to the bank, you go get what you got to get, and then you make your payment plan and you pay it back. However, when you have all those different things out, it just puts you in a bond, because now the money that you could be saving, you can't save because you're paying these things back. And I know sometimes situations get us where we are and where we get to where we have to utilize these things. But let me tell you something. I've been there. I've been there. Oh boy, I've been there. I tell you, my time right before I left New York, oh boy, times were, I can't even say hard. They were just, they were even, that's harder than hard. But here we are now. So what's the fix? What's the fix? Do like a payoff method. There's so many different payoff methods. You have the avalanche, you have the snowball. When I got this house here, I did the snowball. I took my credit cards and I lined them up. I didn't even realize how many credit cards I had. But the funny part about it, so the credit cards that I had, I wasn't even using. They were cards that I had from years ago that were still on my credit report, and I had to make a decision. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I know there's so many different ways to get things off your credit. A lot of people, they do letters, they do this, they start getting codes and things like that. I don't know those things. I am not in debt collection. That is not my forte. What is in my forte is making a decision to pay off something that I did use. So if I know that I actually used this card and I actually spent the money and I didn't pay it back, the right thing to do is to go ahead and pay it back. They loaned it to me, I pay it back. So that's what I did. Did I work out some settlements? Absolutely. When you work out a settlement, you work out a settlement to the where it will not be a negative impact on your actual credit. And that's what I did. That's what I did. And let me tell you something. I am so grateful that was an option for me, because I was able to get a strong credit at that point. It was, I want to say up until like 5 years ago, where I was still like, now I see how you can use credit to leverage your life. Debt isn't just money. Debt is time. And when you have so much debt, it takes away your time, because you could be using money on something else, but yet you're using that money on that. So I will definitely say, take that advice. Again, all this is educational purposes. We just sitting here and we getting it together. If you can, you take, I went backwards. I know some people take the largest bill and they work on that one first and then go down to the smallest. I went for the one with the highest interest rate. And then I worked that for me wound up being one of my smallest balances. I chunked that one off. Then I went to the next one. And then some of them were so small that I was able to take off too. Sometimes you don't really realize what you have going on. Baby, we're going to get this right. But the fourth mistake, being the financial security for everyone. Now, I know we have to help individuals. We have children we have to help. We have maybe grandkids we have to help. We may have nieces and nephews. We may have a plethora, however that might look for your family dynamic. But sometimes when you're doing certain things, especially if these individuals are above a certain age, it can definitely hinder you from doing what you have to do. And I know family comes first and we help family. You know, we have a thing that we do when it comes to family. However, remember, you have to have your finances ordered so you can live out the rest of your life. Sometimes when people are younger than you, they still have a lifetime to get things together. You teach and you pass on knowledge so they can be stable. Okay? So what does that even look like? Funding other people's emergencies. And sometimes the emergency don't even be the emergency. It just be an issue. Like, you put yourself in this bind. It's different, you know. So you have to sit back and you have to figure out if tough love is needed. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get ahead. Now, if you okay with, then carry on. So what's a fix for this? Having boundaries And having maybe like a helping budget. You might have a budget on the side where you may say, if anybody need anything, here's that, and I can help them, with this. They don't have to know that, but it's there because someone may have helped you. Someone may have helped you. I know I've been helped. So at the end of the day, I do have a little helping budget. So where if an individual need a little help, and that's for my kids only. It's for my kids only. Yeah, because I don't ask outside. I know, not at this age, no. And also saying no without guilt. You're trying to get somewhere. And you don't want to be held back. And the fifth mistake, ignoring healthcare for early retirement. Now, we've talked about this. I know I spoke about it from a perspective of my employer, but I have to realize that every employer is not the same, and also even have to sit back and think. That's how I knew that I was being a little immature in that area, because even prior employers, I had to sit back and think, what was that pension plan like? I have no idea. I'm not there anymore, but I have to sit back and think, did they even give out? But I didn't realize how much health care costs. I spoke to a friend of mine today, and she was just saying how she was just unhappy at work and so forth. So I knew she was over 50. And I said, hey, can you just retire? And she was like, I'm not old enough. And I said, how old are you? And she was like, I'm just 56. I'll be 57. And I said, you're old enough if you want to. And she said, well, I want to wait for full retirement. And plus I want to get full benefits for my health care. And I said, do you have other funds? And she said, Kelly, yeah, I do know. I know where you're going with this. She said, but I know how my life is set up, and I know I just have to just wait. You know what? I respect you for that. You back off at that point, and all you do, you support. And she said, yes, I can go ahead and I can retire. I can have partial health care insurance and things like that. She was like, but I do have other health elements and things like that where I do need my full health care. Okay, totally understand. You rock out. And she's like, but my fear is I wait, and then next thing you know, I get sicker, and then I can't really enjoy my retirement. And that is the catch-22. The mistake that we sometimes have is we think like how her and I had the conversation about the healthcare. And she really wants to retire, but she can't because she has to wait. So she has to work about maybe 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62. That's about 6 more years she has to work, and things like that. So what gets us sometimes is we put it off. We don't think about other alternatives that we can do for healthcare. And there's so many other alternatives I did not even know. We're going to talk about that too. What are healthcare alternatives for retirement if your employer does not give that to you? We'll talk about that later. So just know that is coming up. But why do we delay healthcare? Why we don't think about healthcare until later on down the line? We think about that we can figure it out later. It's going to be something there for us. But in all reality, I really feel like these healthcare insurances, they play on the retirement. They play on the elderly and things like that. And it's like, sometimes you see people get this insurance and they're paying on it monthly, not going to the doctor, but every 6 months or every 3 months. And it's like, if you can keep that money back, we're going to talk about that. See, my brain is ticking right now when it comes to how much money you put out on a monthly basis and how much money you put out if you just use your money and pay for something when you go? What's the way out? I mentioned financial assistance and things like that from different healthcare facilities. It's like, how does that look? How does that look? But what's the fix? What's the fix for us? We have to do our research and we have to build a healthcare line in our budget. And I mentioned about maybe paying for it out of pocket might even be a better option when it comes to the daily or the monthly going and specialists, if you need one, and prescriptions and things like that, because you can definitely put that on your taxes as a write-off. We know that, right? Y'all bringing that finance girl out. Y'all bringing that finance. I'm trying to not do that. I'm trying not to do that, but yes, you can. Yes, you can. So you have to weigh your options. Yes, you may put out the money in the front, but it may come back to you at the end. Sometimes people say, I need my money right now. But it all depends about how your lifestyle is. Again, we're planning for retirement. We got to think a little bit out the box sometimes. And we just have to plan ahead. We have to plan ahead because we never know. And sometimes these insurance companies, they'll cancel your policy. So you definitely have to have a kitty on the side. You just never know what can happen. I mean, I've never experienced that. But if they can cancel so many other things, who knows? But I know for me, and I don't want this to be a mistake for any of us, the same way how we could put aside for that bag that we want, that pocketbook that we want, we still have to enjoy life. We can put aside for our later years. Healthcare is not a later problem. It's the plan. We just have to plan and plan it in. I think for me, I'm definitely going to have a kitty just for that. For those of you who don't know, I do have a series on my channel talking about becoming 50 and things that I'm doing. And I will be taking you guys along with me. I will be going to Fidelity. I do have an account there with them, and I'm going to sit down with a financial advisor for retirement and things like that. And I will be taking you along because, again, if I can learn, I can share. And sometimes, the more that we know and the more that we share with each other, I know we're all cut differently and I know that we all have different needs, but sometimes it's having an outline and a semi blueprint that can help with the next individual. So I hope you follow along so you can come with me to Fidelity so we can, get our things in order. I'm excited. I do have a nice portfolio for my retirement, but I definitely want more. And I definitely want to expose my daughters to IRAs and things like that, Roth IRAs, all the different things, and definitely into brokerage accounts because I want them to be set up as well. I want them to all have their own accounts versus having accounts on my account. So it's going to be a nice ride. So I hope you join me. If you fix these 5 things, you can speed up your retirement timeline. And it's not just you, it's me as well. I like to always include myself because we're doing this together. I want this to be a group effort. I want this to be me and you doing it together because we want to make sure that we retire well and still be able to travel, do things, get groceries, buy clothes, do all the things. It's all about, I don't want to say short-term sacrifice for a long-term reward. I just want to say we can do things within reason. We can still live our life, buy us something nice, treat ourselves well, but yet we're still pushing to the side. Right? Yes. And if you want me to create a simple retirement checklist, comment retire below and I'll create something for us. It'll be free. It will be free. You guys know I'll create the checklist and we just be making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. So comment retire and then also comment where you are. What are you doing? And, are you doing the brokerage accounts? Are you doing the Roth IRAs? Are you doing the IRAs? Are you doing high yield savings? Or do you have a pension at work? Or do you have a 401k? Or whatever you got going on? Because at the end of the day, this can help someone else. And someone else may sit and say, I wasn't thinking this far, or I do have it and I stopped it, or I pulled it out due to the emergency, because those things happen. Let's have the dialogue in the comments. So if you like this conversation, please make sure you share it with another Black woman over 40 who is looking to retire, or if not, just another Black woman. And I will catch you in the next conversation.